This podcast includes dark humor, violence, and adult themes. Content warnings can be found in the episode description. Welcome to the Scamverse, a small, absurd, and overlooked galaxy frequented by criminals, thieves, charlatans, podcast listeners, and other assorted ne'er-do-wells. This week's tale is The Little Kaiju. Will Mariel meet her prince, or will she stay under the sea? This episode is sponsored by the Caveat Emporium, Scamverse's largest shopping center. Enjoy! Oh, and real quick, I want to apologize for my attempt at Sastian the crab. No matter what I tried, he wound up sounding like drunk Terminator. But I think you'll still like it. Enjoy.
Caveat Emporium, Scamverse's largest shopping center, is having a one-day-only partial refund extravaganza.
Partial refund extravaganza.
One day only on November 17th. You can bring in up to one defective product purchased within the last 3 days in its original packaging, unopened, with a receipt.
Don't forget the receipt.
And Caveat Emporium merchants offered a refund up to 5% of the purchase price in store credit.
Store credit!
Store credit is better than cash. Better than cash.
At the Caveat Emporium, we love our customers so much they should never need silly things like class action lawsuits again. So come in, one day only, November 17th, partial refund extravaganza at the Caveat Emporium. Caveat Emporium Incorporated denies the allegations in the class action complaint, denies any failure to comply with the laws identified in the complaint, and denies any and all liability for the causes of action alleged. Partial refund extravaganza is considered fulfilling terms in Section 8.5.2 of the class action settlement.
The Little Kaiju. Kaiju lived in isolated sea caves for a very long time. However, after years of underwater radioactive F-bomb testing, an opening was made connecting the lives of Kaiju and the rest of the world. The Kaiju are ruled by King Thriton, and the youngest of his daughters is Mariel, who stands at a petite 130 feet tall. But what Mariel lacked in height, she made up for in spirit. At least, she used to. Mariel had lived a happy life under the sea, with her much larger sisters and friends, but she hadn't been the same lately, not since the tunnel was found. Her scales just don't have the same sassy shine as before. Her best friend is an enormous stone crab named Sastian. He's a bit older than Mariel and is assistant to King Thriton. Unlike King Thriton, Sastian is much more observant of Mariel and her feelings and her moods, and lately he could tell that Mariel was glum. So he asked her what was on her mind. And she said, "Oh, it's about my prince, you know."
I do. But why don't you dump out a whole bunch of exposition?
Okay, I was in the tunnel formed by the F-bombs, and I was collecting those things we find from the surface world. You know, the things I collect. Oh, what are they called?
Microplastics.
Yes, I was on a microplastics run when I heard a boom, and there was a big explosion at the surface. A large ship was on fire. Most of the crew made it onto lifeboats, but some injured crew members couldn't make it, and some were drowning. One of them had a white shirt and tight pants and beautiful dark hair and a handsome face. He was clearly someone important to both the kingdom and this story plot. He looked down, and our eyes met. I felt a connection. I did. But then he must have been injured, and he passed out, and he started sinking down to the deep. I started to swim to him. I know I shouldn't, not after King Thriton's warnings.
Exactly, child. He could be a podcast listener.
No, my prince is not. Never say that again.
Sorry.
I'm ever so sorry I snapped at you. Anyway, it doesn't matter. As I started to swim to him, a mermaid came out of nowhere and carried him to shore.
Surely ha come back then to save the others. You know, it wasn't just a prince on that ship, and they were probably husbands and fathers.
No, didn't see her again. She only saved the handsome one. Fuck those other guys, apparently.
Man, oh man, that tells you a lot about someone.
So I never got to meet my prince. And now, I'm stuck down here.
I suppose you forfeit our bet then, since you will never see the prince. I said he won't, and you can't prove he will, so I win.
That's not fair. You know we are not allowed to go to the surface world. And if I could go see him again, he certainly will. I know he will. So, our bet stands. Angry with her friend Sastion, Mariel swims off, only to bump into King Thriton. He's called that because he holds a Thriton, which gives him his power. And in case you don't know what a Thriton is, it is an 80-foot-long glowing metal spork, so he can jab and scoop, which comes in handy. Oh, I'm ever so sorry, Papa.
What is the matter, daughter? Is this about the surface world again? I've told you, you can't go to the surface world. It's too dangerous up there. Humans can't be trusted. Some of them are podcast listeners.
But my prince. Oh, I've said too much.
Prince? Your prince? Never! This is where you belong, and this is where you will stay.
Oh, Papa, how can you be so cruel? Mariel swims off again, but doesn't get far before running into Versala, the octopus-shaped sea witch, and her two large pet eels, Razzle and Dazzle. What's the matter, dear? Why with the tears? Or at least I assume tears, since we are, underwater and whatnot. Papa won't let me go to the surface. He doesn't understand you. Poor dear. Come to Auntie Versala. Sastion runs up to Mariel.
Mariel, get away from that no-good sea witch.
Don't listen to him, dear. I know what it's like to be misunderstood. You do? Of course, all of us antagonists do. But I can help you if you want. If you want to be on the surface world with your prince, you can be a part of that's world. Green. Yeah, sure, same melody, close enough. How did you know about my prince? I'm sorry, but I couldn't help overhearing you and King Thriton's discussion.
I bet.
Yes, if you want, I have the power to give you... Yes? Human legs.
Ursula, you foolish hag. Once she's on land, her body mass is going to crush those tiny, tiny human legs.
No, not just...
Lame.
Okay, let me explain.
Lame.
off, Ursula.
No, I would also make her...
off, Ursula.
Exasperated, Ursula, Razzle, and Dazzle swim off with Ursula muttering, idiots.
Oh, that was good. Anyway, back to our same old life under the sea. Hold on a moment, child. You're still thinking of going up there. You heard what the king...
I just need a distraction. Sorry, Sastian. I promise I'll make it up to you later.
What the...
Hey, everybody.
What the...
Everyone, over here.
A nearby group turn their heads and or eye stalks to Mariel.
What the...
Sastian was just telling me about a podcast he's been listening to. He's a podcast listener.
No.
The mob turns angry and swarms toward Sastian, who runs off and curses Mariel. At the same time, Mariel makes a break for the tunnel and the surface world. Once Mariel breaks the water's surface and breathes air the first time, her head feels woozy, but just for a minute. Once her head clears, she begins walking to the shore. There are larger ships, but also smaller ones that bounce against her knees. She wonders how far she can throw one, so she picks up a rowboat and chucks it as far as she can. It curves and lands far away. Not bad, she thinks. She tries a few more times and gets a little better. The empty ones are easier to throw than the ones with screaming people still in them, but you never grow if you don't challenge yourself. After some fun boat chucking, she walks up to the shore. The coastline village is filled with small huts. Their thatch roofing tickles Mariel's feet as she steps on them, and she lets out a petite giggle. As she moves closer inland, the huts are replaced with short buildings and railroad tracks. A train barreling down the track cannot stop in time and crashes into Mariel's foot. To her surprise, this hurts, and Mariel lets out a yelp. She looks down at the tiny train and all the people clambering out of it and running away. She feels angry and decides to yell at them for being rude to her. This is when Mariel learns she has fire breath. Huh, well, that's new. Of course she wouldn't discover that underwater. She giggles again and jumps for joy as the ground shakes. Mariel wonders if her new fire breath works on cars and buildings. And sure enough, it does. How exciting. That's definitely going into today's diary entry, she thinks to herself. When the buildings around her are blazing infernos, Mariel discovers that burning buildings warm the scales on her legs nicely, and she gets a toasty, warm, cozy feeling. At first, she was a little worried about the surface world, but now she feels all warm and relaxed. Her Zen moment is disturbed by a loud sound. How annoying! A clock tower was chiming. She thinks this noise must be so irritating, not only to herself, but also to all the little humans she's stepping on. So Mariel decides to do the polite thing. She marches over to the clock tower, and with a few swipes of her tail, the tower falls over onto the town's volunteer center for the poor.
Oh, you're welcome,
she says to the townspeople after stopping that noisy clock. Mariel looks for her prince. He is nowhere to be found. But would a prince really live in this part of town? She thought not. This part of town is kind of a dump, what with all these burning cars and collapsed buildings. Her prince has better taste than that. Mariel scans around and sees a castle up on a hill. Bingo! Mariel starts walking to the castle when several tanks appear, muzzles trained on her. She looks at the tanks for a moment. They're only 8 feet tall anyway, so she steps over them and keeps walking to the castle. At the castle, armed guards begin shooting at Mariel. The bullets pelt her scales and fall off, but the effect gives, to her mind, welcome tickles. She scans the battlements and towers, but does not see her prince. Then it happens. The drawbridge to the castle lowers, and out comes the prince, her prince, calling to the castle guards to hold their fire. Prince Derek. Oh yeah, his name is Derek, by the way. Prince Derek walks out of the castle, followed by that mermaid, but now she has human legs.
Oh, human legs with a human body,
thinks Mariel and curses Aunt Ursula for not being clearer. Prince Derek looks up at Mariel. I know you. I saw you when... Their eyes meet, and Prince Derek recognizes her from when he was drowning. You were there. You saw me just before I was rescued. I remember you. Mariel lets out a soft growl and lowers her hand. Prince Derek starts to climb on her hand when he's held back by the mermaid. It's okay, darling. The mermaid looks up at Mariel, and they lock eyes for a moment. Then the mermaid smiles and releases her grip on the prince. The prince climbs up on Mariel's clawed hand, and she lifts him up to her face. They smile at each other in connection with... never mind, she eats him. At first he tastes just squirmy, but after a few crunches he goes limp and releases a blast of flavor. And Mariel won her bet with Sastion.
He did! My handsome prince did taste as good on the inside as he looked on the outside. Ha! Take that, dum-dum Sastion.
Mariel smiles and lets out a triumphant giggle. Then a tiny yawn. She rubs her sleepy eyes, looks around from the hilltop, and sees miles and miles of buildings and cars and trains and people to play with. But it's been a busy day for a little kaiju. Mariel turns to walk back to her sea cave and crushes the mermaid with her tail.
Teach you to take my snack away,
thinks Mariel as she walks off. She thinks about what a wonderful adventure today has been. The little kaiju returns to her sea home and tells all her bigger friends about the new playland for every one of them. And they all come back the next day, and the day after, and the day after, and the day after, forever. The end. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. By joining the Scamverse community, you help put the us in morally ambiguous. Thank you to Scotchy Scotty for additional voice performances, outro music by Cullah, sound effects by Pixabay, music used for background is by artists listed in the show notes. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars and your hands on your wallets.
There's no